Welcome back to another Xano video. Today we're going to be covering how to use an external API in order to take an address and turn that into a geolocation. First thing, we're going to have a post query endpoint. Mine is called add geolocation, and our input is simply just an address. So what we're going to do is we're first going to create two variables. One is going to be called encoded address, and all this is the address with a URL encode filter on it to make sure that the API can actually read the address we're giving them. We also have our Mapbox token, and I've created a variable for this. You can get this from your Mapbox account, and your Mapbox account is completely free, and so is the token. So once we've got those two items, we can move on to adding our external API request. So you can see we've got our API mapbox.com. This is our geocoding API endpoint with Mapbox. And you can see inside this URL, which I will provide, we have address in capitals and also token in capitals. And what we are doing is we are running a replace filter on this URL, and we are searching for the address, and we're replacing that with our variable encoded address, and we're doing the same with our token. So that's nice and simple. Now, the next stages are a little bit more difficult. So what we're going to do is, if you see down here, I'm going to be taking the response of the geo response. So this is the response from the request we do. We're just going to run this with an address. And in the response, we get it's quite a big response. It's very long. So what I'm going to do is I want to copy this here. Then I'm going to come down to create variable. This is called new Geopoint, and all it is a Geopoint, which it's as text, but it's actually a JSON object. So if we go full screen in this, you can see it's actually JSON. And if you want to be able to copy and paste a point like this in, all you have to do is come to your database and create a new Geopoint just like this. Come here, and I'll just put a point anywhere on the map. Let's go add point, save. Then we can right click, edit as JSON, copy this, and paste it into here. Very easy. And I've just set the longitude to 111 and the latitude to 222, and we'll be using the replace filter. So don't worry about those two there. You can see we've got our replace filter, which is 111 for the longitude, and the replace for the 222 latitude. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky. So we're replacing the longitude with the georesponse.response.result features, geometry, coordinates, and the first result. Now, how did I get this? Well, what we're going to have to do is come down to our georesponse, and we're going to click subpath. Then we can define our subpath by copying in the the response that we copied earlier. And then when we go define, we can now select from this entire response what we want. So I'll just find it now. Features, the geometry, and coordinates. And you might think, why can't we just add this geometry point inside of our database? And the reason for that is because despite this being a geometry type point, the coordinates are contained as a list. They don't have key value pairs. If we come back to our database, we look at this as JSON. Our data is longitude and latitude with key value pairs for the values, whereas in here, it is simply just shown as a list. So we have no way of calling the key assigned to this value. So we're going to click coordinates. Done. Then what we're going to do, because we're getting the first result, we're going to press dot for dot notation. I'm going to press 0 because in code, as you all know, 0 is actually 1. Everything starts from 0. So we'll update that. And then you can see we've done the exact same thing, but at the end, instead of coordinates 0, we've got coordinates 1 because we are getting the second value. So if we save that, we can then return, instead of georesponse, we're going to return geopoints1, which is adding a record inside of our database. Save that. We'll run and debug this again. We'll get the same result, but look, we've got our ID, created at, our address, and also our new geopoint. And if we come over to our database and I refresh this here, you can see here are the two geolocations that we've just added. So now you might be thinking, okay, well, this is all well and good. We have an address input and we can get the coordinates for that location. That's totally fine. But what if you have a database that's already existing, and maybe you have 300, 400, a really large amount of data that already has addresses in there, but you don't have the coordinates or the location. Somehow, you need to get that, or you need to add those data fields without doing it manually, because that would take a really, really long time. So what we've got is another endpoint called update geolist, and this is an endpoint you would run once. We're following essentially the same layout previously, except we're going to be doing this inside of a for loop. So we're creating our variable, our Mapbox token, and we are also querying all records from Geopoints, which is this database here. Just before I do this, what I'll do is I'll clear all these cells. Clear cell, clear cell. Perfect. We're querying all of Geopoints, and we're returning that as address list. We're then doing a for each loop on on the entire list of addresses. And we're creating a variable, same as we did before, encoded address, and that is item.address with URL and code. So we're not making this outside of the for loop, we're making sure it's inside of, because we need to do this for every single address inside of the list. Then we're going to do our API request to the Mapbox API endpoint with the same replace filters, encoded address and token. Nothing down here, very easy. And then we'll create another variable, new Geopoint, the same layout as last time, exactly the same, with the same replace filters and the same response. Nice and easy. And then we're going to edit record in Geopoints. We're getting the field name address, so we're not using ID, we're using the address to find what variable we are updating, or editing, sorry. And our Geopoint is equal to our new Geopoint down here. So as you can see, we've got no Geopoints in this database, but we've got plenty of addresses. So what we need to do is run this, and now this actually has address here, but I'll delete that because we don't even need an input. If we run this, you can see we get our last record that we made. But if we come over to the database and refresh, so as you can see, now inside of Geopoints, we have all of our Geopoints automatically added without us having to do it manually, simply by just using this API endpoint. Nice and easy, nice and easy. Now having an API endpoint, which we use to intercept the address coming into the database, and then from that rendering a Geopoint, will allow you to save your coordinates and display that address on a map if you so want to. And also the second API endpoint will allow you to take an existing database full of addresses and then edit and create a Geopoint for every single field. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this somehow helps you with your database and your API development, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one.